inquiry team for giving us the fullest picture of what happened at Manchester Arena on the night of the 22nd of May 2017 and into the early hours of the 23rd. To those injured, to everyone still struggling, and most importantly, to the families of those who died, particularly John's family and Safi's family, I wish to say this very clearly. You were badly let down on that night. You were entitled to expect much better from our emergency services than the response provided. And as you have heard from them today, everyone here is truly sorry that did not happen. Of course, there were many people who did act courageously and selflessly in the moment, as Sir John said himself today. We recognise what they did. Police officers and paramedics did run into what they believed to be a dangerous situation, as did arena staff, travel safe officers and staff from Northern Rail at Victoria Station. In particular, the members of the public who helped others in a desperate situation deserve our huge thanks and more recognition for what they did. Many people in all emergency services did do their jobs properly, but they were let down by the lack of a properly organised response. As the inquiry report makes clear, the reason people were left in this unacceptable position was the result of poor advanced planning and a failure to follow established guidance for an incident of this nature. That led to a poorly coordinated and confused response operation on the night. There is no justification nor excuse for this. I can only speak for the services for which I am responsible, Greater Manchester Police and Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. And in my view, they failed so badly because at the time they had poor leadership, a poor internal culture, and an inability to collaborate properly and apply JESIP principles as the public should have been entitled to expect. Back in 2017, it was particularly the failure of the fire service to respond on the night which exposed the fact that something was seriously amiss with the overall response. That was the reason why the Deputy Mayor and I decided it would be wrong to wait for this public inquiry to conclude, and instead we initiated our own process of inquiry and learning to undertake a non-statutory review so that we could begin to understand what had happened and make changes to our police service and our fire service at the earliest opportunity. I note today that the Kerrs Lake report has been endorsed by the chair of the inquiry and has been used as a foundation for today's report. With regard to the fire service, the Kerrs Lake report in 2018 helped us get quickly to the scale of the internal problems it had, which was confirmed by visits to all fire stations in Greater Manchester that the Deputy Mayor and I personally undertook. I can say this with confidence to the people of Greater Manchester. Your fire service of today is not the fire service of 2017. It has new, more effective leadership, which in turn has brought about an improvement in internal culture and, as His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services has confirmed, has also improved in the way the service supports its staff. Evidence of this can be seen in the agreement reached by the new Chief Fire Officer and the Fire Brigades Union for a new approach to dealing with a marauding terrorist attack. Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service is currently training all of its firefighters to respond in that eventuality, equipping all pumps with the capability, and alongside London is the first fire service in the country to do so. With regards to Greater Manchester Police, what this inquiry reveals is very troubling. It is barely believable to me, given my request to them to cooperate fully with the Kerslake report, that our police force back then provided an inaccurate account of their actions 9 months after the attack, which was signed off by the former Chief Constable, something which he accepted in evidence in 2021 was a, quote, grave error. It is my view that the force tried to stick for too long to a corporate narrative that suggested it had acted effectively. That wasn't just disrespectful to the families and those injured. It had the effect of misleading myself and the Deputy Mayor, denied everyone the opportunity to learn, and delayed the action needed to improve the force. This is sadly something we have seen in the aftermath of other disasters, and a pattern that keeps on repeating. In late 2020, I had all the evidence I needed to change the leadership of Greater Manchester Police, and that is what I did. Last week, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Constabulary confirmed that there has been a total turnaround since. So I can also say this with confidence to the Greater Manchester public. Your police force of today is a very different entity to what it was in 2017. But there is no complacency at all on our part. We will face up fully to every single word and recommendation in this report to ensure that the process of improvement and learning in both services continues, and the Deputy Mayor will say more about this in a moment. However, I see 4 additional substantial actions which are needed in the light of what has been revealed today. First, I have asked the new Chief Constable and Chief Fire Officer to consider whether we need a major overhaul of the handling of 999 calls in Greater Manchester. While I do not criticise individual members of staff, it is clear that North West Fire Control did not adequately support the response on that night. This has led me to question whether the arrangement of handling 999 fire calls in a separate service outside of Greater Manchester is the right one for us going forward, particularly when it comes to mounting the best joint response we can to major incidents. Therefore, I have asked for an evaluation from both chiefs on whether we should co-locate police and fire in a joint control room in Greater Manchester. I expect to receive that in the new year and will make a further statement then. Second, I am clear that this inquiry provides a major point of reflection and learning, not just for our police force, but indeed for every police force in England and Wales and public service in the country. Time and again, in the aftermath of major incidents, we have seen how public services have failed to tell the truth at the first time of asking. This doesn't just deny bereaved families the answers they deserve, which is appalling in itself. It denies those organisations the opportunity to learn and change. A legal duty of candour on all public servants would break this pattern that keeps on repeating. It would empower police officers and public servants at every level to say what they feel needs to be said to all official inquiries, and thereby resist any pressure from above not to do so. In that way, it will be a protection against the wrong behaviours that can lead to poor cultures. It is 5 years this week since Bishop James Jones recommended a statutory duty of candour in his report on the experience of the Hillsborough families. Given that a previous Prime Minister personally commissioned his review, I consider it disrespectful to her, to the Hillsborough families, to the Manchester Arena families and the Grenfell families, that review has lain on a Whitehall shelf for 5 full years without so much as a government response. This cannot continue. I have had a constructive meeting this week with the new Home Secretary, and I call on her to bring forward a response as soon as possible and to accept the need for a statutory duty of candour. In my view, a culture of speaking candidly is what our new Chief Constable has brought to Greater Manchester Police. It is what has helped us to exit special measures, and it can do the same for other police forces as a tool for learning and improvement. But it needs to be enshrined on a permanent basis. To help, if the government would like to trial its approach, I would like to offer Greater Manchester to the Home Secretary as a place where we would be willing to do that, working in partnership with the Home Office. Third, like Sir John, I want to point to another legislative change which is needed, and if enacted, would actually help the emergency services do their job. This is the duty to protect, or Martin's Law, which would strengthen security arrangements at public venues, big and small, and create a consistency and clarity currently lacking. We pay tribute to Martin's mum, Figan Murray, for championing this change, but its implementation is now overdue, as Sir John said. The government must turn commitments to legislate, given to Figan and others, into real action, and resist any calls to water down this important and much needed law. Fourth and finally, I want to ensure that the findings of this authoritative and important public inquiry will be protected in perpetuity and not be allowed to be undermined or subverted by those who wish to present false narratives and conspiracies. I find it utterly abhorrent that people injured in this atrocity and families bereaved have been harassed and trolled by those who seek to portray it as a hoax. I can barely believe that something like this is even happening in a country like ours. But I have seen also how it is becoming more common for the victims of this and other disasters to be on the receiving end of trolling using false narratives. I call therefore on the government to consider making it a specific offence to deny the facts about major disasters, such as the deaths that occurred, and to subvert the findings of non-contested inquiries like this, creating false narratives and conspiracies which re-traumatise victims. In conclusion, over the last 5 years, I have had the privilege of getting to know the families who lost loved ones on that night. They are, without exception, wonderful people who, as I said at the start, deserve so much better. I have also got to know many of those injured and have seen firsthand how they have come together to help each other through initiatives such as our incredible Survivors Choir. I hope they all know me well enough by now to know that I would never give them platitudes like lessons will be learned. What I can instead say to them today is that major changes have already been made on the back of what happened, and more are to come. Thank you.